host, Dr. Dawn-Elise Snipes. We are continuing to talk about adding triggers for a recovery lifestyle. In the last unit, you talked about adding physical triggers and affective or emotional triggers that will help you feel good and really want to live a recovery lifestyle. In this section, we're going to continue to talk about that, but we're going to move on to talking about cognitive, environmental, and relationship triggers. Yes, there can be positive triggers in all of those areas. Let's start with cognitive. Cognitive factors that enhance recovery include optimism. So what can you do to enhance your optimism, to encourage yourself to see the glass as half full instead of half empty? Knowledge of the causes and treatments for your presenting issues, whether it's depression or anxiety or addiction or even just relationship problems. Knowing what causes it and what you can do about it, that's a cognitive protective factor. Knowledge of how to stay healthy and the impact of physical health on recovery. We've already started to touch on some of that and why it's important to have what we call health literacy, to know about all of the things, including sleep and nutrition and what the medications and stuff that you take and how they can impact your recovery. You need to have confidence in your competence to handle situations. When you feel efficacious, when you feel strong and capable, it helps you tackle the issues that life may throw at you because it's not always going to be a picnic. Creativity and effective problem-solving skills are always helpful in recovery and in life. Distress tolerance skills are other protective factors that can be helpful. And we're going to talk a lot about distress tolerance skills in other units. But basically, sometimes when you feel a feeling, there isn't anything you can do about it at that particular moment. Like, I don't like getting shots, but sometimes I have to get the flu shot. Sometimes I have to get a shot. And I need to have skills to help me tolerate that distress in a situation that I can't change. So I may not be able to change the situation, but I can change how I react to the situation. Clear future goals and plans to achieve them. Also, it gives us direction and helps us get excited about what's coming for us. So, this is a protective factor. When we have hope, when we have optimism, when we can see a goal down the road, it can help us keep going even when the going gets tough, which takes us to determination and perseverance. Being willing to go through the tough things, the tough times when they happen, telling yourself that you can do it, and having the belief that it's all worthwhile are really important for recovery. So go back over each of these areas and identify 3 things that you can do to enhance each of these. So what can you do to enhance your optimism, to encourage yourself to see the glass as half full? What can you do to improve your knowledge about how to stay healthy and the causes of your current issues and maybe what you can do about them? What can you do to enhance your confidence in your ability to recover? What can you do to enhance your creativity? What can you do to help yourself tolerate distress? What can you do to clarify your future goals? What are 3 things you can do? And what are 3 things that you can do to remind yourself to maintain that determination and persevere even on the days that you really don't want to? The next set of protective factors are environmental. And we talked a lot about environmental triggers, how there can be things in the environment that remind you of times that were unhappy, that remind you of times that you wanted to use, or maybe remind you of times that you did use. And you want to eliminate as many of those as possible. You're not going to be able to eliminate all triggers. It's just not realistic. What you want to do is eliminate as many as possible, figure out how to deal with the ones that are left, and add positive ones to kind of counterbalance what's going on. I'll give you that example of the doctor's office again. I hate going to the doctor. However, If it is a pleasant environment, if the people around me, and we'll get down to relationships in a minute, if the people are pleasant, then it makes it a less stressful, a less distressing experience, and it doesn't trigger my anxiety as much. So let's talk about environmental protective factors. When you're in a safe and comfortable environment, you're less vulnerable to distress, and you can relax and let your brain and body kind of regroup. You want to create an environment as much as possible that communicates to you that you are safe and that you are empowered. You have the ability to deal with whatever happens. Think about ways that you can create emotional and physical safety. What sights, sounds, and smells can you put in your environment so you feel safe, so you feel content, and maybe even happy? Before I did this recording, I was actually on YouTube, and I was going through different parody songs that just made me smile, made me laugh, because, sometimes you need to add in some positive. Ensure you have access to basic needs like health and mental health care, housing, food, medicine. All those things are really important in order to help you feel safe in your environment. Part of safety means getting your basic needs met. And finally, identify sources of employment and financial support. In order to maintain a safe environment, a roof over your head, and get your basic needs met, you are going to need money. And you've got to figure out where that's going to come from. You may be on Social Security disability. You may be working. There are a lot of different ways you may get money, but you need to figure out how you're going to maintain that safe environment. Spend some time thinking about each one of these areas and what you can do to increase your feeling of emotional and physical safety, and make sure that you will always be able to get your basic needs met. And finally, relationship protective factors. Not all relationships are great, but some relationships are wonderful. And in recovery, it's essential to have positive relationships. Now, in recovery, we do say don't get into romantic relationships, preferably for the first 2 years. Some people say 1 year, but I like to say 2 years. Try not to make any huge decisions, get into any romantic relationships. But it is important to start building friendships, building relationships, not only with other people that are in recovery, but with other people in general. Rebuild relationships with your family if you want to, and build a relationship with yourself. You probably have been very disconnected from yourself in your addiction and or in your depression or anxiety. Sometimes when we're depressed, we're not even in touch with anything anymore. We're just kind of numb. And it's going to be important to get back in touch with yourself and start asking yourself, what is it that I need today? So social support being essential for health and well-being encompasses things like a pro-social peer group. Who can you hang around? It may not be going out all the time. Maybe it's just people you text with, or people on forums or in chat rooms. You need to have secure attachment. And that's something we're going to talk a lot about in later videos. But improving relationships so you're not always fearing abandonment. Having this sense that you are worthwhile and people are going to be there to help you. You need to have some sort of family connectedness. Now, family can be very loosely defined as those people that are important in your life. It doesn't have to be blood relatives. It's important to have people that model effective coping in your life. People who have good distress tolerance skills, who don't, get really angry and just completely decompensate every time something bad happens. You want to see people who are good at handling distress. You need to have effective communication skills, and that's a difficult thing that most of us really don't have. We weren't taught effective communication skills. So it may be important to start learning about what those are and how you can improve your communication skills and become more assertive. Emotional intelligence is also super helpful in relationships. Emotional intelligence is your ability to empathize and kind of understand where other people are coming from and take their position. You may not agree with it, but you can sort of understand or empathize with them. And creating a caring school, work, or home environment is also going to be really important. Having an environment where the people in that environment are caring and nurturing is going to be helpful, if not essential, to your recovery. So again, spend about 30 minutes thinking about ways you can enhance each one of these. And if you don't know much about one of these areas, like communication skills, how can you learn about them? There are a few forgotten parts that we didn't cover. Two main things that people forget when they try to change. We do what we do for a reason, and any substitution must fulfill the same function to roughly the same degree. If we are trying to avoid or cope or make depression or anger feel better, what we do now may not be the most helpful thing. So anything we do instead, if instead of, drinking a fifth, we choose to do something else, that must roughly help us cope to the same degree. It may not be perfect, but it's important that we recognize that if we were struggling and whatever we were doing, as unhelpful or unhealthy as it may have been, it served the purpose and it got the job done. We need to replace that with something healthier that also gets the job done, not just, kind of does it, but really does a good job at helping us get the job done. Think about it. When you go on a diet, you wouldn't just replace chocolate with celery. That would be unsatisfying. You wouldn't stick on that diet for very long. We need to make sure that we're doing a good job at finding alternate tools. It's more about living a healthier lifestyle guided by purposeful action than removing any one behavior. When people start to recover from addiction, it's great. But unfortunately, maybe they're not using their drug of choice anymore, but they can pick up substitute addictions like gambling or sex or eating because they haven't dealt with all those underlying issues. They're not living a healthier lifestyle. They're just not actually at this point using their substance or addiction of choice. So recovery is more than about just stopping using. Because you will find substitute addictions to avoid dealing with feelings, to avoid dealing with people, etc. If you remove the behavior without an adequate replacement, you may relapse. If you remove the behavior but are still around the same triggers, you may relapse. If you are immersed in positive activities, you're going to have less time to make the wrong choices. That's one of the reasons why we suggest that people stay busy in early recovery. You can't avoid all the triggers, so you need to have tools to deal with those. But it's also important to be doing positive things that make you happy, things that help you move toward that goal of a rich and meaningful life. Recovery means working towards a rich and meaningful life. It can be really exciting. But it's important to remember, it's not just about eliminating the negative, eliminating the hurt, eliminating the triggers, eliminating the unpleasant people. It's also about adding the positive. You don't want to just take away things. You want to add things to your life. What is it that you want to add to improve your physical health, to improve your happiness and make it happen more often, to improve your attitude and your thinking style, to improve your relationships? What can you do to nurture and grow this budding recovery lifestyle?